Hi, friends. Welcome back to Hawkeye Speaks. Sitting here at the piano, about to do a little chat about soil health, the living conditions of our planet, and our economic and value systems. All right, so my last little chat about soil health and climate, I got right into talking about economic systems, capitalism, communism, socialism. And I want to just kind of pick back up a little bit on that. I had a little bit of attention from Drake out in Hawaii. If you're watching, Drake, greetings, brother. Thanks for the comments. Hope I didn't rub you the wrong way too much with my talk on climate and agronomy and desertification. No, as we all acknowledge, it's really easy to say things that upset people, and to especially when we're jumping around a lot of different topics. It's very easy to rub people the wrong way. So from the outset here, I would have to state that my personal intentions are health and wellness. I am pro-life, and I'm not talking about abortion. I'm talking about pro-life to the absolute maximum. I believe that life creates life and fosters the conditions for life. And I wish to see a healthy world built up of healthy organisms, individuals, families, communities, ecosystems, and a place where our children can go on thriving and our children's children. That's my goal. That's what I'm biased towards. I'd like to see clean water that flows in the streams year round. And outside of that, I'm not pro or anti anything. I did mention in the last talk that I personally have adhered to the principle of not engaging in the practice of usury. Now, that being said, am I outright anti-usury? I'm going to tell you, I am outright willing to consider that I could be wrong about anything. I could be 100% wrong about that. It's been my personal opinion that the speculative economy, which is usury essentially, it is also, and as Drake had mentioned, or kind of trying to clarify for me or anyone, that there these differences of financial capitalism versus industrial capitalism. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with that, but I would say in this day and age, we are in the post-industrial period. We're in the pre-transhuman period. What does that mean for capitalism? What I was saying is that to modern young people and general people, I believe all it is financial capitalism. That industrial capitalism is gone. There is, and whether we're talking about the means of production through machines or production of goods and services themselves, it's always the individual, the person, the creative nature of people that empowers the system, that is completely removed when we're only looking at financial capitalism. All of the power, the energy, the movement comes from money itself. That's how money gets to be completely valued over other things. But this is what we're really talking about here, is not per se the economic systems, but what do we truly value? And can we work towards our values? Can we formulate holistic goals that adhere to what we actually value? And can we work towards that within the context of this economic system that we're stuck in? Or are we stuck in it? Can we work around it? So I am not anti-usury. My opinion is that it is a bad thing, and the speculative economy is a bad thing. That's my opinion. But in some ways, maybe it's necessary. Maybe it's necessary for people to use each other and just be able to make money with their money, not to produce anything whatsoever of value. Whatever, maybe that piece is necessary. This is not the point of the conversation. The point of the conversation is how do we adhere to our values and move towards systems of regeneration. And what I believe is that our values are much more important than the economic system. So And I think really in our heart of hearts, many people, if not almost everyone, kind of has a similar set of shared common values. And if you got a group of people together, even from the most disparate camps, to sit down and talk about what it is that they really want, you would find that people do often have the same true goals and values. This is something that Alan Savory talks about in his book. And about formulating the holistic goal, that a holistic goal in itself implies that we are going to consider the different needs of the players. And that's one aspect to jump right into here, that again, for me, what am I biased towards? Well, I said I'm biased towards life and health. But as we're looking at these economic systems and value systems, something I think to keep near and dear to our hearts is kind of the fact of how strongly we are adhering to the principles of the individual or the principles of the collective. And I have no doubt, in this way I am biased. I'm biased towards balance. I don't think that it's going to be successful in any society if the bulk of the people are adherents to individuality or simply adherents to the collective. And that is to say that if you have a bulk of the population that believes we need to put the needs of the collective above the needs of the individual, I think that's dangerous. And I think that the opposite is dangerous as well. That the opposite of severely individualistic culture is it runs the risk of being deadly narcissistic, which is maybe what we're seeing in the West. And then cultures that are too aligned towards the needs of the collective don't have the ability to support the artistic nature and the creativeness of the individual, which can be greatly beneficial to a society. So one of the real big questions that we need to ask ourselves, which I had already alluded to, is can we achieve our goals? And if it is one of our goals to have a balance between the needs of the collective and the needs of the individual, once again, does that fit within the economic system? And as I had indicated about Marx, this idea of what is Marxism, well, it's my understanding it's a conversation about the natural progression of the state. And there were the early works of Marx and the later works, and I guess there's a bit of a difference, but to me, that's the point that is more important, is this progression of the state. And I mentioned in my last talk that I haven't per se studied communism, but what I mean something specific by that, which is that for me to say that I have studied communism, I would have to go to countries that have implemented the system and talk to the people, myself, the people. Or I would at least have to read a book or a few books by someone who has done that very act of going to speak to the people. Because I would imagine that we can all agree that the West is very biased towards anti-communism, and chances are anything that you hear in the West about these communist systems is going to be bad, and it is. We hear over and over again about how these are failed systems. So I would really have to investigate it more deeply for myself on a worldwide practical scale. But have I kind of, after hearing Drake talk about what is his opinion of this, what is communism, I said, well, okay, maybe I have studied communism, because I have studied community. I grew up in a family, a fairly large family, and I have at least endeavored towards living in community. I can't say I've been very successful at it, but I have been to a few communes. Community, communism. I mean, obviously, commune is the root of communism, okay? But to equate communism with the family is certainly ignoring the picture that in this family, the state is the parent. So it certainly is worthwhile to consider the family as the core of a commune. And I think that's great. I'm all about having the core of unity being the family union. And then that builds to, multiple families, and it builds to a community. And we can see that there is the potential for cohesion where we have people that are kind of on each other's side. It's like a team. The community starts with the family unit. But in this modern economic situations, communism, socialism, it's the unit has the state as the parent. And that is a very slippery slope where we're going to have, if we endorse this viewpoint of communism, we're going to have an emphasis on the collective, the needs of the collective, but at the end of the day, the decision-making power of what's right and wrong always is in the state's hands. It's not amongst the people. So how can you have a world where the people's values stay at the forefront? And what I want to suggest to everyone is that I think you have to just look at it the other way around. That it is that in order to analyze these systems and what we're able to do within them is taking a top-down approach. And it is giving more power to the state, where I think the power should be in the people's hands. And that, in fact, really the power is in the people's hands. And that governments and even academia are always reactionary. They're always there to fill in the blanks and deal with the discrepancies. It's actually human beings and community groups that come up with all innovation, and not just innovation, but carry forth the torch of values of what do we actually want. And it can seem like the system is driving things, but the people always have the true power to initiate change. And when there is just an absolute lack of a cohesive value system amongst the people, that's when the state's system, economic system, kind of becomes the value system. And that's what I'm saying about now. Today, there is nothing other than financial capitalism, because we don't have a real challenge to that on the ground. We have this kind of silly argument of some people being anti-capitalist and some people being anti-communist. But what are the solutions, please? To me, what are some options that are not financial capitalism and that work in post-industrialization? So are we talking about regenerative capitalism, agrarian capitalism? Well, the thing is that if, again, capitalism is only crony capitalism, it is only financial capitalism, then we may want to remove that from the psyche, from the driving, factors. Okay, we don't need to work towards that end at all. Potentially, what we maybe need to have at the forefront is just agrarian regeneration. Okay, if we want to focus on the value of land and nature and increasing the profitability of land and nature, I think we need to be somewhat aware of how that can be co-opted by crony capitalism. If we're going to produce value in goods and services by harnessing the free energy from the sun in the form of photosynthesis, and then creating long-term profitability through enhancing the quality of health around us, and we're surrounded by a world that just believes in usury financial capitalism and just wants to make more money for itself, kind of this entity, then we are potentially fighting a losing battle. So I think it's time for us to consider new models. new models. Communism and socialism are disempowering to the individual, of course, because they make the state mommy and daddy, and the state will always disseminate the plans and ideas based on their interpretation of what needs to be done, which will always be against the needs of the environment. Unfortunately, as much as the language may be framed in terms of equality and sustainability, the state is a mechanism that has its hands tied, really. It is not a mechanism that supports nature. It is a mechanism that supports itself, that supports the structure of power, and it supports the structure of money. So, is it possible to achieve our goals within these systems? Well, what I'm saying is that I think in a way it is and it's not. It's not if we just fully rely on that system to fill in the blanks. Okay? It's not. But it is if the system of regeneration has strong values. Strong values that make it a cohesive unit, and capitalism is just there to pick up the scraps. It can't be the other way around, okay? And even if we move into a communist socialist system, because that's the progression of the state, still, once again, you're going to be more limited in what we're able to do within that system. But still, without the cohesion of values being held amongst the people, it's even more of a recipe for disaster, really. But if the values are held within the people, the economic exchange system, it doesn't make too much difference, because what I'm going to allude to is that with agrarian regeneration, what we're investing in is the land. So we're coming up, trying to come up with a system where we don't need to give rights to nature. We don't need to say, oh, this tree has rights that we're not allowed to violate, because that is regulation. That's a regulatory mindset. What we are hoping to have is an educated populace that believes it is valuable to society to have this tree growing, just using a random example. But understanding the difference, and then employing the power to take ownership over this dichotomy, that essentially we see it's long-term thinking versus short-term thinking. If we're stuck in a mode of short-term thinking, what do we need just for right now? How can I get through the next 5 minutes? We lose the power to control these systems in a way. And whereas if we're using long-term thinking, we're thinking what will benefit us, what will benefit our children, what will grow true prosperity, then in a way where the power gets taken back. We have the power to decide how things should be. So I think it's this power differential, really, where if the people are arguing with each other, and this is really the point of doing these talks, is that I think we've got some issues with people just kind of wanting to fight with each other because they got nothing better to do, maybe. But if we can come together, form holistic goals, and take the power back at the people's level, then these economic systems don't matter as much. The state is going to go the direction that the state is going to go. And in some ways, it's better off just to let that mess play out. But agrarian regeneration can operate within either one, okay? Because, again, investment happens without money, even without the involvement of these economic systems. It happens from the individual. It happens from the family, from the community. It happens from passing on the value system from one person to another about what it is that we truly want and how we're working to achieve that. Whereas, again, when we're disempowered and we're looking at these models, okay, It's kind of, we have to rely on the state, to offer solutions, which is, I hope we can see, is essentially a recipe for disaster. Because, as I said, the state always has its hands tied. The state can never bring in the best ideas, the newest, brightest people with the most creative solutions. No, it's always has to weed out the most the most special ideas to come up with the most bland, replicable ideas that make money. This is part of just how the mechanism of the state works. So, communism. Well, unfortunately, it's not the family. It's the collective becoming the ideology to where we think that we're all one big family. But that is a very slippery slope in which, once again, people may have very mixed interests, and some of the people may have interests that run absolutely contrary to yours, and at the end of the day, the state decides who's going to be right and wrong. So we ultimately lose all the power under that system. It is not the family. The family unit actually has at its dichotomy natural law, that there is a pecking order in all of nature, and that when we have a true family unit, that is respected. The patriarchy, the matriarchy, the respecting of each of the members of the family and the honoring of kind of their position, that's part of a family unit that is completely gone from communism. And that's just the point to make right there, is that, yeah, it's based on the commune, but it's an ism. And isms, as I said about the veganism, isms are just a nightmare. Let's just do it without an ism. Let's get rid of the ism. Capitalism, communism, socialism, because we don't need to have a belief system, a value system that is the economic system. I think we need to have belief systems and value systems that represent our values, and then have economic systems that fall behind and support that. Unfortunately, they want to be ahead, and as I said, we may not be able to change the trajectory of the state. But the people must be sure. The people must be sure. Where does the true value lie? In the economic system or in our hearts? So, this is just a little rambling. Few thoughts about capitalism and communism. So, I hope it's helpful for you. Thanks for listening.